Hey guys, welcome back. This is week 43 Project Life. I'm starting with my photos and I've also got a couple of brand new stamp sets from Kellie Stamps. So it is release day over at Kellie Stamps. As always, don't forget to check out the description box because I have a discount code for you. As well as my new Kellie Stamps here, I have got a bunch of crepe paper sweet story stuff. I've been loving this collection and I decided these sort of fun prints and colors was something that I really wanted to pull into my spread this week. As you can see, there's a there's a definite lack of photos going on. I had to create an enlargement and then I only had 3 other photos. I did have a few other photos, but because this week was during my October not quite daily project, most of those photos kind of went into there, and I didn't really think that any of them were special enough to repeat on this spread as well. So instead I've gone with the more minimal look. I've got a gap where I'm going to do some journaling, and like I said, I filled in the rest with that sort of 6x8 photo enlargement. I do those photo enlargements in Photoshop and I just print them on 2 6x4 bits of photo paper. Makes it super easy. I will link a video up here that shows you how I do that. So you can see I've picked out a few patterns. As much as I loved all the colors and whatnot in this collection, I ended up keeping things a little bit neutral. I really struggled with the fact that that bottom 4x6 photo had so much orange in it. This photo here with the temperatures from this week, it has a bit of orange in it as well, and so I struggled a little bit, so I kind of coped with that by adding in a peachy color, kind of hoping to tone that orange down. I've picked this yellow diamond pattern for my smaller 3x4 card, and I had to do the love heart pattern for Shane and Lily there. Now my plan for this 3x4 card was to do a little bit of partial stamping. This is the Anxiety Vibes stamp set, and the stamp I want to use says anxiety get me like ... but it wasn't anxiety that was getting me this day, it was the heat. So I'm just gonna partially stamp out the word anxiety, and I want to use some alphas to spell out heat. I had pulled out a couple of I think Pink Fresh Studio alphas to start off with. Same old issue as usual. Didn't have any E's, so I went into my stash of little alphas and pulled out a bunch of different ones, and to be honest, I had that issue with quite a few of them. These ones here are some glitter alphas from Heidi Swap. I did have an E in there, so I just laid out the word heat and then partially stamped it, and I didn't get technical. I just am really careful which part of the stamp that I ink up, and then I just inked up the part that I wanted and stamped that down. Now I was just messing around with whether I wanted to add anything else to that, but I decided in the end I didn't need to. I'm just going to leave it with that little simple sentiment underneath the photo and move on. Now I really liked this enlargement because it was going to give me this 3x4 card that I could do like a little bit of stamping, a little bit of journaling. I just wasn't entirely sure how I was going to do that. So I have picked out the stamp that I want to do, and I'm going to use my Brilliance Moonlight White ink. But as far as the journaling goes, I definitely could have journaled directly onto my photo like in Photoshop. But I didn't do that because I didn't know what I was going to say yet. And so I went through that die cut pack to see whether there was anything else I could use instead of maybe journaling. I decided that there wasn't. There were words that I wanted to say, so I ended up going into my stash of little scraps, and I happened to find this perfectly sized scrap that was actually from the same collection. So it's got that really fun peach color, the same as the die cut that I pulled out, and so I just ran that through my typewriter, adhered it down, and stamped my stamp directly onto my photo above the journaling. So it kind of breaks up all of that gray on there and just adds a little bit more color, but also gives me a space to do some journaling on there too. So I really loved how that stamp came out on my photo. I want to repeat the same thing. Like I said, I had a spare spot on here, and despite me having already done that little bit of journaling, that was kind of specific to one story. I'm going to do a little bit more kind of generalized journaling on this 3x4 card. It's just a bit of white cardstock. It is smooth, but my stamp, this was the first time I'd used it. It didn't stamp well. So I grabbed my sand eraser and just gave that a little prep. And I mean, even from here, you can see what a difference that makes. It just gives it something to kind of grip onto and makes that ink much, much smoother than it is ordinarily. So I'm just ended up giving that a couple of goes there, and what I'm going to do is then grab another 3x4 card and I'm going to start again. So you can see here I've got two inks. One is a peachy color, one is a very, very light pink, and those two colors I specifically chose because they match that polka dot paper that I'm using for my title card. And so when I stamped those stamps down, I just stamped one slightly to the top and the right and one slightly to the bottom and the left. So it kind of creates just this little drop shadow. It's a totally very subtle effect, but I really like the difference that it makes rather than just stamping down one colored stamp. So again, I just ran that card through my typewriter, and now I am moving on to my title card. Now this kind of, I don't know what it's called. I think it reminds me of gumdrops. I love this paper. It's probably one of my favorites in this collection, and I 100% have hoarded every piece of it that I have because I didn't want to use it. So that ends today. What I did was fussy cut out one of the strips of the gumdrops. I just felt like my card, I needed a shelf. I needed something on there apart from this pattern. And so I've just trimmed that out. I've trimmed it out so that there's a little white line around the outside of it. That's just going to help it stand out off the actual background because it is a pattern. And then I'm going to use that, like I said, as a shelf for my title. So same issue, picking out an alpha that has two E's this time. These are, I think, from Willow Lane, crepe paper as well, but the color's perfect. It stands out against that background pattern. It didn't have any numbers though, so I am going to stamp down some numbers with my Bishop alpha. I think it's the Bishop numbers. If they're still available in the shop, these were released last December. So if these are still available in the shop, I will link them down below because they are one of my favorite huge numbers. So I'm just stamping them in black. There's plenty of black going on in this spread, and it's just going to help that stand out off all of those colors on that title card now. Is not adding a label or anything like that. There were some little labels. Well, the problem with the labels in the die cut pack from Sweet Story is they're not little, and actually I don't even think they're from the die cut pack. I think they're from a cut apart sheet and I've popped them into that pack, but they're pretty big. They're too big for this, so I just stamped my dates directly onto the background paper, and then I did add a little puffy heart sticker in between them rather than drawing it like I normally do. I figured while I've got my puffy stickers out, I will add a little bow on top of that stamp, that anxiety stamp on the right hand side. Love the wee pop of colour there. And I want to add some into the space at the bottom of my journaling as well. But I realised I've got a sticker book as well. And these stickers are like clear stickers, which I struggle to use a lot of the time. But sticking them onto white cardstock is the perfect opportunity to use them. So I grabbed a couple of little flowers and just popped them into the gap there. Now this was when I realized I pulled out this label sheet. There were labels. I knew there were labels somewhere that I could have used for my title card, but it's fine. It is how it is. What I wanted to do was stamp a sentiment onto this photo here, but man, it's busy. It's a busy little craft-a-math desk scene. I was definitely not going to be able to stand out a label on there. So instead, I'm just going to stamp my sentiment straight down onto the photo in the kind of gap that there was. Now my last card here, I really loved how that gumdrop strip turned out, and I kind of wanted to replicate that a little bit. So I'm going to use the Good Vibes stamp set. Great stamp set, this one. I love all these blocky pattern making stamps. They're great. So I've used this circle stamp a whole lot of times. I'm going to use it again to recreate this kind of pattern. So what I'm doing is partially inking up the stamp. When I use these dewdrop inks, I did end up having to mask it with washi tape just because there isn't a straight edge. But otherwise, on these straight ink stamp pads, I just am really careful to ink it up halfway up the stamp. And then I'm just going to stamp these in a line onto some white cardstock. Now the colours of ink that I've pulled out are sort of inspired by that original gumdrop paper. They're not exactly the same, obviously, but I picked as many as I could. I only have to fill this 6-inch wide piece, but what I decided to do was just keep stamping. I'm kind of just randomly stamping colours. I decided to just keep stamping all the way across the page, and that way I could like pick the random colours that actually I liked best. So I'm just stamping all the way across. Some of the colours I do end up repeating. You can see here the peachy one, which I didn't mind because there is a whole lot of peach in there, but I'm going to end up just partially sort of cutting it off where I want it to go. So same deal, I'm going to fussy cut around these. I am leaving a little white border. The fact that the original paper it's not perfect. They're not perfect little semicircles. They are a little bit random, a little bit rough, not all perfectly straight either along the top is perfect. This kind of stamping, I didn't need to make it too perfect. You can see here, it doesn't take long to trim that out, and then I'm just working out where I want those colors to go, what might be best with the colors I've already got on the spread, and I decide right at this end works nicely. So I'm going to stick that down underneath my photo in exactly the same way that I did for the title card, trim off the edges, and then I'm just going to stick down my photo on top. Now, because I had rediscovered those labels from the sticker book, I decided that they would be the perfect place to add another stamp on here. There are 2 stamps that kind of go together that say good vibes. However, the label that I picked out was not going to fit both of those stamps on there. I tried. You can see here I'm like, oh, that's not going to work. Luckily, I stopped before I stamped it down. So what I decided to do was, instead of stamping good, I stamped vibes. And these labels are a tiny bit slick. The paper's a little bit glossy, so I did use some StazOn ink for that. That Memento Tuxedo Black ink probably would not have worked very well on here. The StazOn ink does stain your stamps a little bit, but it's totally fine. And then I'm going to add the word love instead of good. So love vibes. I'm using those same little glitter alphas because I knew I had one E left, and that way it sort of ties in the other card that I've done. And then just to add a little bit more color, a little bit more fun, I'm going to add a few more puffy stickers on here, just to kind of bring in a little bit more color. So the stickers don't really have anything to do with the photo as such, apart from just adding that little bit of whimsy. So I've got a wee thing that says hello, there's a wee cherry, strawberry I think, and an ice cream, and then I call my spread all done. Now, like I said, I will leave a discount for you in the description box, but head on over to the Kellie Stamps store and pick up a couple of these really fabulous stamp sets. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.